What's up, vaqueros, and welcome back to the channel, and happy update day because we just got the Season 2 Reloaded patch, which dropped a few bits of weapon balancing that we're going to cover because they did in fact touch the shotguns, and it's not all bad. Of course, the KV Broadside was the big one that got a nerf, but there's a few small changes like a small buff here and there that is actually kind of cool that we need to talk about. So with today's video, we're going to be going over just Warzone 2 content, no multiplayer. Even though some of the stuff we cover might kind of bleed into multiplayer, this is mainly a Warzone 2 focused video. So let's go ahead and just dive into some of these changes with the patch notes. First things first, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the KV Broadside. It's been plaguing Warzone for a while now, and people are not happy about this gun. It is easily a top contender for meta at close range, and usually when a shotgun is that good, it's probably too good. And yes, this gun was in fact too good. So what all changed? Well, as you can see, we have a big number of things. Lower torso damage is now weaker, so basically stomach shots are going to deal a little less damage overall. Damage ranges have been reduced for both buckshot and dragon's breath, and even damage overall has been lowered for buckshot as well as dragon's breath. So before this update, the KV Broadside had a 3-shot kill range in Warzone of about 9.9 meters. That's against 250 health, and that is a really nice 3-shot kill range. Past that, it dropped down to at least a 4-shot kill, but more than likely it would take more than that if you push range. And this is with no attachments, mind you. So now the 3-shot kill range for the KV Broadside has been lowered to about 9.2 meters. Keep in mind, this is the 3-shot kill range, which consists of about 3 different damage drop-offs, but instead of going over each one individually and bogging you down with the details, I figured I would talk about the big number being those significant drop-off ranges. So to go from 9.9 to 9.2 meters, honestly, it's not that bad. Trust me, if you were around when the Gallo and the Street Sweeper got nerfed, they didn't hold back with those. So if you enjoyed the buckshot Broadside, consider yourself lucky in that range department. Now what really starts to take a toll on the Broadside is the fact that the damage per pellet has been reduced in each of these ranges. Before this update up close, you could deal around 50 damage per pellet, but after the update point blank, it's down to about 35 up close from what I can tell, but there is still a cap of 120 damage when you shoot someone with armor up close in the face, if you were curious. Then for the next ranges you can see on screen, they also got adjusted. Keep in mind again, these are hand-tested values. These changes may not seem significant on paper, but they do add up, because what these changes mean is that instead of taking just 3 pellets, for example, now it may take 4 instead. Or further out, since you deal less damage per pellet, you have to make sure your shots are really connecting and that your spread and your aim is on point. So even though the 3-shot kill range is still out to 9.2 meters, which is still really good, usually it's going to take at least 4 shots in my experience, simply because again, pellets deal less damage and the stomach also deals less damage, so you need to hit more of them. So when you spam away like most people use this gun, it's going to feel weaker when you're out at that 9 meter mark, and it does feel pretty noticeably weaker. Up close though, the gun still packs a pretty damn good punch though. Now let's talk about dragon's breath. This is probably the way that most people ran the gun, and it's because overall you did more damage and you had a very similar 3-shot range coming in at around 8.9 meters compared to buckshot's 9.9, and before the nerf, dragon's breath did just enough damage to be able to kill someone in 2 shots up close with a burn that kicked in. So it was essentially a 2-shot shotgun that shot really fast. You had to wait a little tiny bit for the damage of the burn to kick in, but this is no longer the case after the update, and dragon's breath is now a 3-shot kill up close. In fact, the damage seems to go up only to about 106 to 116 points of damage, which seems to be kind of a consistent for whatever reason, which means that buckshot does in fact deal more damage up close now with 120 damage, but both are 3-shot kills though. Also, for the range for that 3-shot kill is now sitting at roughly 8 meters exactly. Again, not terrible in the range department, but the real oof, like with buckshot, is that the per pellet damage has been reduced, and the fire damage that kicks in doesn't help as much anymore since that's also been kind of kept in check. So with dragon's breath, it ends up being significantly weaker past that 8 meter mark than it was before, so you won't be able to push range like you were before this update with dragon's breath or even with buckshot. Overall, the nerf feels pretty good. I feel like the Broadside in Warzone still has some utility, and it's still pretty dang good, but only really up close, as in nothing past like 8 meters or so, and against a couple people it can still hold its own up close. It's not going to be as brain dead easy to squad wipe or kill multiple people in a haze of gunfire, so that's nice to know they seem to have found a happy middle ground with the balancing. If you were worried about it being nerfed into the ground, don't be, because it's still pretty solid. But again, don't go in thinking you can challenge SMGs at 15 meters anymore. As for what ammo to use, I'd say both have some purpose, and honestly, buckshot may be the way to go now because your damage is going to feel more consistent, and now you can spend that extra attachment slot on something else like a barrel or a choke instead of just Dragon's Breath. That being said though, Dragon's Breath is still great because shooting flames out of your shotgun like a giant wet fart is super distracting, and it can actually make it hard for people to see you when they just see flames rushing towards them. So I would say buckshot is slightly better than Dragon's Breath now, whereas before, Dragon's Breath was a clear-cut winner. Who knows, maybe Slugs may even be the new meta for the Broadside, we'll just have to see. Now onto some other changes, like for instance, Dragon's Breath as a whole seems to have had its residual damage reduced while burning. It doesn't seem to have any effect on the other shotguns from what I can tell, other than they're just maybe a small bit weaker, but if you were curious, they're still great. The other Dragon's Breath shotguns are still going to be the way to go, at least in Warzone, where you basically get those really nice 2-shot ranges and more range overall. The Lockwood 300 still a great 2-shot monster. The Bryson 800 and 890 still have great 2-shot ranges as well. It turns the Expedite into a 2-shot kill. It's really good on all the other shotguns in Warzone, so I would say it's still basically the way to go for these other shotguns, except for the Broadside. Now for my favorite part of the update, we actually got a buff to slugs. We got increased headshot damage on all slug type ammo for the Bryson 800 and the Bryson 890, and that includes explosive ammo. And now we have a minimum damage against armor, which should help you get more consistent damage at longer ranges, since you have a fixed number of minimum damage now against armor. The first thing I want to say is, this is awesome. I mean, Raven, if you're listening, or maybe it's Infinity Ward, I'm not 100% sure which team is taking the reins for balancing at this point. If you're listening, thank you, because this is the kind of buff that is a huge step in the right direction. As it stands, headshots up close now deal 1.8 damage to the head, whereas before it was at 1.62 damage, so you basically deal 180 damage per shot up close with a headshot. So no, we don't have one-shot headshots, but I have a feeling if one-shot snipers get reintroduced at some point, they can potentially reintroduce a one-shot slug shotgun with headshots as well. Now, does this make the gun better? Absolutely, but it's still tough as hell to use, and the body multipliers didn't change. I mean, it's slugs. They travel slow, sometimes they go all sorts of wacky directions, but like I said, this is a huge step in the right direction, and that's really what gets me excited about this buff, is because a weapon class like shotguns, which are niche, that have an even more niche ammo type, someone looked at them and said, hey, let's give these things some love. So I'd like to think that means some devs out there maybe watch my stuff, and if that's the case, I seriously can't thank them enough. Changes like this get me so excited to play and excited about what the future could hold for shotguns and just the game as a whole. Of course, let's keep things like the Broadside in check by a lot, but it's nice to see pump actions and things like that get some love. Although I'm kind of sad it doesn't affect the Lockwood 300 for some reason. I'd argue that shotgun could probably use an even higher headshot multiplier than the Brysons, but I went in and checked to make sure it didn't affect slugs on the other guns, and it didn't. So slugs on the Brysons are now the strongest in terms of damage now. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get to revisit the 725's glorious one-shot headshot sometime in the near future. We just gotta wait it out for those one-shot snipers first. And the last thing I wanted to mention that I just found in the patch notes is basically they reduced the aim down sights penalty on shotgun scopes. Not really a huge thing, I don't think many people use them before, but with this and a buff to slugs, I kind of feel like they're trying to hint at something, like maybe you should actually give these a shot. I don't know, but that's basically it for all the changes, guys. It was a lot to talk about. I'm sorry if the video dragged on, if I rambled too much, but that's basically all the important changes for Warzone 2 that I found. Overall, it was a solid update. The Broadside is in a much better spot. It's not nearly as oppressive. It's still really great up close. It's not been nerfed into the ground, but yes, it's not going to be the thing that you see everybody rocking. It's just going to be one of those occasional offsets where you see someone once in a few games maybe. It's just not really that strong anymore. Also, the Bryson Slug Buff was much needed, very cool. I still think we could use a little bit more love for things like the Lockwood 300, but this is a great step in the right direction, so I'm a happy camper. But now I want to know down below in the comments, what do you guys think of these changes in general? Are you happy with the Broadside nerf? Are you happy to see slugs got a little bit of a buff? And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.